Waking up before the rest of our camp, I launched a small yellow rowboat at dawn from a canal community in the west shores of the Salton Sea. We were there for our second event in 2011, this time to have scientists speak in between bands and artists for anyone who would listen. Silently the sun rose, brightest on flat water, sending a line of glorious light straight to me in the cool morning air. Nothing spoke besides the knocking of my oars on the side of the boat and the songs of more birds than I had ever experienced in one place. Silhouettes against orange and yellow, circling higher, reflecting on a mercury sea. I laid back in awe as the boat spun with them. There are places and people that most of us have forgotten about. Once we allow ourselves to remember, they're often the hardest to forget. I didn't plan on ending up at the Salton Sea. I was called and decided to answer. Someone literally left me a voicemail saying, "Come use my ranch to save the Salton Sea." It's truly a beautiful thing. This world we've been blessed to be a part of. This world we've been blessed to share and tasked to steward. As the species who has clearly had the most impact in the shortest period of time in perceptual record, we have a responsibility to maintain balance and now to bring back balance. In biological interconnection, it's homeostasis. At the heart, that means respect for the interdependent web of existence of which we are all a part. If we draw a parallel from the cellular level to the planetary level, we can see that we are all sharing this pale blue dot. The best thing we can do for every person is to help maintain that balance of life on this planet. The fantastic thing about free nature is the circle of life. I suppose many people could relate to these natural systems like a circular economy. If we each do our part, and not too much, the world keeps on spinning so beautifully. We're tuned to it. If we choose to take from that circle, it begins to change shape and wobble in ways that can make it hard to maintain and harder for everyone to hold on. Out of tune? Some things are infinite or very close to it when we know in which direction to look. What I call God, the universe, space, human potential, love. We, humanity, have been learning lately, though, that our environment is not infinite. Animals, trees, clean air, and fresh water are not infinite. So why the Salton Sea? Doesn't it smell weird? Is it dead? Why don't people just leave? Why should I care? As we all know, this isn't the only place that is facing intense environmental challenges. The Salton Sea Basin has been full more often than not in the past few thousand years, mainly depending on the whims of the Colorado River and silt buildups that would either direct water into the Imperial Valley or through the then thriving green, lush deltas into the Sea of Cortez in Baja California. For thousands of years, the Salton Sea region has been an important home for native people and a valuable stop along the Pacific Flyway for migratory birds and all that come with that host of biodiversity. The current rendition of this lake, filled in 1905 after an irrigation mistake, filled the entire valley with the full force of the Colorado River for 2 years. People thought it would quickly disappear, but due to the increased agriculture that had been set up in the region, the water remained. Eventually, land speculators set up a sale of the American dream, and the Salton Riviera was born. It was exciting. It was a fun place during the 1950s and 60s. It was a place of fancy parties, water skiing, camping, hotels, nifty boats, yacht clubs. Frank Sinatra, the Beach Boys, Marilyn Monroe. Good times. But perhaps we shouldn't have built so many towns near this lake. But we sure did. See, it's a terminal lake, so there's no outflow. So if too much water comes in, the water level comes up. Anything that flows into it stays there, aside from evaporation. Industrial scale agriculture in the US and factories in Mexico have used the Salton Sea as a sump for their wastewater for the last 100 years, causing accumulations of toxins in the sediment at the bottom of the Salton Sea. It remains neutral, mostly, when swishing at the bottom. And yes, you can still swim in it. I have. But it can do great damage when exposed to desert winds. The agricultural nitrates, phosphates, and pesticides created algae blooms, which had removed oxygen from the water, spurring fish, then bird die-offs, and disease. It's been many years since these kind of large-scale catastrophes. The entire thing has become one in slow motion. It's so slow many haven't noticed. A few generations. This formerly productive fishery supported thousands of fish-eating birds along the Pacific Flyway and a once thriving recreational fishing industry. The Salton Sea previously had reported to have sustained 424 species of migratory and resident birds. It's an incredible amount of biodiversity. Years ago, I spent a few days in the rainforest in Yucatan, Mexico, and the curator there was explaining the 150 species of birds in the middle of that lush rainforest. Salton Sea, 424 species. Eventually, coastal cities needed more water, and the southwestern states set up the QSA, or Quantification Settlement Agreement, which has been the nation's largest agriculture to urban water transfer, and it's been ramping up every year. Like many other lakes in California and many rivers, water agreements were set in place to drain the Salton Sea's inflows and transfer them to the coastal cities that need it. The state promised to restore and prevent a catastrophic fallout, but instead squandered for decades. We chose to support the Salton Sea because of the greatest need. Water is being taken away with the life left there to fend for itself under a ticking clock. The numbers get blurry, though each second ticks louder. Eventually, the salinity that had always been in the region's soils and the Colorado River began to accumulate to a point that wildlife began facing even bigger challenges. It's close to twice the salinity of the Pacific Ocean. There's still an incredible amount of life, but it is under extreme pressure. And we need balanced wetlands. We need balanced inflows in areas that are separated for lower and higher salinity to maintain life there. The recent diversions have also exposed the toxins in the now soils and these fine particle PM10 dust to strong seasonal desert winds. The spring can be rough, blowing this into local communities, including Coachella Valley, Imperial Valley, Riverside, Los Angeles, northern Mexico, and more. Hey, even the smoke from Mount St. Helens traveled around the world 3 times. And 29% of San Francisco's air pollution comes from China. Ignoring the Salton Sea goes far beyond these valleys. It's amazing that everything is connected and we're all in this together. The Salton Sea shoreline communities, including tribal lands, have been disproportionately damaged by water policy decisions made far from here, in Washington, D.C. and Sacramento, that divert to major cities the water resources that have sustained the environment, biodiversity, economic vitality, and morale of these communities for generations. The Desert Kuya Indians had thrived in this environment for thousands of years, fishing at the shore of ancient Lake Kuya, now the Salton Sea. They had maintained a balance, and they would plan many generations into the future. State and federal agencies have begun to act over the last few years, but it's the largest lake in California, a big ball to get rolling. It's so much bigger than each of us. What a fantastic reason to push. This isn't a story, though, about everything that's going wrong. There are a lot of great things happening at the Salton Sea, but they need support. This is about the theme of empowerment and a collective vision of a better future for the challenges we're facing. Any challenge presents unique opportunities, and with passionate hearts and minds coming together, unique solutions. One thing I feel strongly about is the need for camaraderie. Our work for the Salton Sea region over the last decade has taught us many things. I believe one of the most important perspectives is to remember the power that each of us has to make a difference. Although it's sometimes hard to see, each action acts as a ripple that dances outward into the environment, into our collective futures. Once we had been doing regular events and work for a while, I had stopped putting all of my faith into who exactly would show up. We were so far from what felt like the rest of the world. Too many times that expectation would leave me missing certain faces, voices, willing hands, minds, and any pockets. People have to want to be there for the cause, the collective visions of a brighter future, and energy we shared together as a group, something bigger. We simply began to know that people would come. Great people, grandmothers and children, professors and farm workers, preachers and drunks, senators and filmmakers, scientists and singers. Each with their own concerns, ideas, connections, and unique ways to help something bigger than themselves. When problems arise, someone always seems to step up and solve. We've learned that when we build it, they do come. Since 2011, our motley crew of volunteers as the EcoMedia Compass and the Save Our Sea campaign has been able to have the Salton Sea included in hundreds of film festivals, news pieces, documentaries, magazines, radio shows, and books, locally and all over the world. We've pressured the state into having seawater import considered at the highest state levels, and 11 proposals are currently under engineering review. We believe this is so important, not only for the Salton Sea region, but for a future with southwestern water resource stability. Our Colorado River is running out of water. It doesn't reach the ocean anymore. We can't rely on groundwater for future generations. We need a sustainable water source if we're going to live here. We've also acquired a piece of land where a berm will be built to hold water into a currently dry canal community called Desert Shores that had been cut off from the main body of the receding sea. And we've secured a pro bono engineering team, and the state has committed $1 million to hire their contractors to do the work of restoring Desert Shores. This means putting in a berm, pump systems, bringing the water level back up, and creating habitat, and once again, a healthy and lovely place to live and be. We've set up a resident oversight committee, though, to keep an eye on state promises and budgets. They've been broken before, but we won't let them this time. My favorite memories of this work have been when communities come together to build something. We all need water for life, so this has been our greatest overall focus. Bring water to habitats and communities. It's our most important resource and the region's most capable tool if we choose to use it. Wet sand doesn't blow. We can choose to renewably desalinate however much we want for drinking, agriculture, and habitat. There are over 400 types of halophytes, saltwater crops. Water brings sustainable shorelines, economic prosperity, plans for the future, happy and thriving lives. Throughout our lives, each of us hears certain callings. If we choose to take the call, it could be the most challenging yet fulfilling experiences of our lives. We can make an impact. We may be pushed to the limit. We will grow and have the opportunity to live our unique version of greatness. If we don't take the call, we may be left in a blinded comfort that hasn't yet met the fullest purpose. It's up to each of us whether or not we choose to answer in our own ways. Fulfillment is about living our unique truths, I believe. We're each on our own journeys that cross paths with many others. For a time, we go in the same direction. One of the best feelings in the world is when others decide to share moments in the same direction. Thank you for sharing these moments. For however long it may be, the collective energy and collaboration in this camaraderie makes things real. They bring depth, validation, and distance. Eventually, a person's draw, their own magnetism, will turn the needle in the compass in an ever so slightly different direction, and ours will turn ever so slightly towards theirs. When we lead with our hearts, with justice, equity, and compassion, we're drawn to others that ring to match those notes. We have been given the gift of choice, where we can make an impact in whichever direction strikes a chord in our hearts. And I'd like to close this piece with something I wrote a few years back called Free Nature. There's a peace and a mystery that hangs in the air of somewhere so far off the beaten path. A certain energy holds a kinetic motion that could occur from any direction. You see it in the wind and the trees, how all can be still except one of graceful fluttering branches or lapping waves in the distance. It is all alive. Here we share a spirit that carries on through each cycle of life and after, the next phase adapting from the wisdom of each expanding detail prior, forever changing with the certainty and security of an enduring and sacred morphic resonance. Unlike the unstable predictability of the city, each living thing in nature, for which there are seemingly infinite amounts, are all represented in such a beautifully rendered chaos of order. Everything has a purpose. Each creature, each plant, each mountain stands in time to help as best they can the natural and shared flow of life. There's nothing left undone, no calls left unanswered. Each and every has a home. This is higher power. If one tree falls, many more can sprout from its gnarled boughs. Every color of life gathered to share these new enclaves of understood community, each from a different walk, flight, or emergence of life, yet all with a common goal, a shared understanding. There's so much that can be learned about and for each situation in humanity's modern culture simply from witnessing the harmony, the efficiency, the mystical order, and divine wisdom in one plot of free nature. There's many answers as questions, if we only dare to listen. Thank you.